Good start, good start. All right. My name is Mike Feely. I'm the editor of the News Journal and Delaware Online. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight for this evening of storytelling. I think, the last 2 years have been interesting, and I think if you guys, anybody's like I have been, I think I've run the gamut of the internet. I think I've seen everything on Netflix. I was just telling my friends, I just watched Fast and Furious 9, so I'm all caught up on all the Fast and Furious movies. It was getting to the point where I was ready to watch Bridgerton, and I think maybe that's when I knew I might have gone too far. But it's great that, we're getting back out again, right? And we're starting to, slowly meet in groups as we're comfortable and kind of get out. And that's what we wanted to bring people together for today, which was just, let's have an evening of storytelling, right? Because there's nothing that bonds humans together more than just sharing stories, whether it's around a campfire, around a dinner table. And so this is going to be our campfire here tonight, our dinner table, right? So we're going to share some stories today, and I've heard them all. They're all enjoyable, and we know you're going to love them. So just a few things here. So one, we're really thankful to the folks at Theater N, anybody back there, just for working with us tonight on this program. Thank you, folks. I want to thank members of the News Journal staff who work with the storytellers and kind of crafting their stories and improving their stories. Did a very nice job. But let me tell you kind of a little bit of expectation. So this is not a TED Talk, right? So this is not, what you get out of it is you. It's not Toastmasters, right? It's not this. These aren't. They may be inspirational to you, but they're not designed as inspirational speeches, and they're certainly not an educational lecture. Again, we're not trying to sell you anything. Although if you want to subscribe, please do. All right. But this is basic storytelling. Storytelling is based on visiting, and like we are tonight, we're just sitting around telling stories. So what we're asking of everyone in the audience tonight is just kind of open your heart, open your mind, pay attention to the person who's speaking and what they're saying and what they're brave enough to share with us today. So let's do this with our neighbors here. Tonight, we're going to hear stories based on the theme of growing up. And we think you'll feel energized, inspired, and maybe even a bit nostalgic as we share them. So I know what you didn't do is you didn't come here to hear me, right? So I'm going to exit quietly off the stage as I bring up our first speaker, Hanif Salam.
Growing up in Wilmington was good for me. I mean, we are the biggest city in the first state, and they said it's a place to be somebody. True story. In my early 30s, I could remember being on Peach Street in Southbridge. You won't hear many people say much about Peach Street in Southbridge, but I was on Peach Street talking to a couple of guys, and we were having a conversation, and I looked up, and the view that I had, you could see the backyards of the houses that were on Newcastle Avenue, and you could see the backyard of the houses that were on Apple Street, and you could see the alleyways that went through the fences, and in that alleyway was the old Welcome to Wilmington sign. Yeah, the brown and yellow one. The one that said, Welcome to Wilmington, a place to be somebody, right there in Southbridge. True story. But being born and raised in Southbridge, I got a lot of great memories. I could remember Eden Park. It was in the heart of Southbridge, right there on Newcastle Avenue. Eden Park, everybody went to go swim and dive at Eden Park. A lot of people said a lot of things about Eden Park, but if you liked to swim, you were familiar because they had the best diving boards and the best diving pool in the city. And right across the street from Eden Park was the extension, the Southbridge projects. Yeah, you didn't want to go over to the extension if you wasn't from Southbridge or you was going to see somebody that you knew in the extension. You definitely didn't want to go in there. But shout out to all my peoples from Extension. They was good peoples. But as you went further north on Newcastle Avenue or Route 9, which some of you may be familiar with, you would run into the Henrietta Johnson Center. The Henrietta Johnson Center was a staple. You could get medical services. Some people kind of just sat in the lobby sometimes. And they even had a gym in Henrietta Medical Center. But the crazy part about the gym, is it had carpet floors. But it was fun. We don't have a rec center in Southbridge, so we used to go in Henrietta and play ball sometimes on the carpet, right? And then when you went a little, the next block down on Newcastle Avenue, that was B Street, right? Now, if you bust a left on B Street, you go to Snow's. Everybody loves Snow's cheesesteaks. You get a banging cheesesteak from there, and I mean, wow, it was a long time ago. I remember the prices. You could get like 4 wings and fries for $3. It was a hit at Snow's. But Snow's was right on the outskirts of the other side. And you had to be careful on the other side, too, because this was the other part of the Southbridge projects. Yeah, Wilmington Housing Authority had the bright idea to put up public housing on 2 separate areas in Southbridge. So you definitely didn't want to go on the other side, but I have fantastic memories about the other side with Mr. Larry Carter. Shout out to Mr. Larry, man. He was in a bungalow up there by the other side, and he would bring us in there and make sure we do our homework all the time and always talked about education. And one time he even had a connect where he had the van, and he would take us out Newark to the Chrysler administrative offices so we could get on the state-of-art computers. This was like mid-'90s. Our mind were blown. We was playing Oregon Trail and Number Munchers. It was fun. Trust me, it was fun, right? But if you came down from the other side, a little closer to where I live at, but on the other side of B Street, you had the neighborhood house. And everybody went to the neighborhood house. We could play in the parking lot outside of the neighborhood house. You can go in there and run around during free time. And it was always good men in the neighborhood house, like Brother Shabazz and Brother Mustafa, who made sure that we had karate and drill team and Wakasa and all these programs that we could do after school. They made sure we had tutoring and all these kind of things. And then we had a staple at the neighborhood house. We had Mr. Bernie. Shout out to Mr. Bernie Wilkins, man. Mr. Bernie used to make sure that we was playing flag football, that we were in the basketball tournaments at the Salvation Army. I'm telling you, it was great. And then when you got down to the next block on Newcastle Avenue, that's where I grew up at, where it was just all houses, and there was a lot of people who may grew up in Southbridge or other parts of the city, but now they were homeowners, and they were proud raising their children in their homes, right? And the unique thing about my family is I had my mom and my dad. A lot of people in my neighborhood didn't have that when I was growing up. But I have beautiful memories of us visiting family and hanging out. I remember we used to go to Sizzlers. It was up there off of Pennsylvania Avenue. And that was a highlight, man. I mean, like, Kadeem Hardison and White Man Can't Jump. We going to Sizzlers. We going to Sizzlers. I used to love it, man. And a lot of people really looked at our family that time as kind of like maybe the Huxtable family off the Cosby Show, because we were tight-knit, and my parents made sure me and my brother were respectful, and we operated with morals, right? So, growing up, I have fantastic memories on Newcastle Avenue. Right 4 or 5 houses up, my great-grandmother lived there. Yeah, my mom's grandmom lived on the same block that we lived on, and she was the freeze cup lady. So I could always go get a freeze cup when it was hot outside. And if you don't know about freeze cups, it's the best Kool-Aid juice you ever had, frozen, in a little Dixie cup. And it's best if you pop it up, flip it upside down, and eat it that way. Man, I'm telling you, water ice ain't got nothing on them freeze cups, especially Monty's freeze cups. And not only was she the freeze cup lady, but we used to have hot dog dinners at Monty's house every Saturday. My grandma, my aunts, my cousins, we would be there every Saturday. I'm telling you, being born and raised in Southbridge was great. And then I could remember my mom taking us out sometimes. We would go to Bill's Meat Market up on King Street or Ben's Shoe Store. You know what I mean? Downtown was a thing. I remember getting older and being able to walk over the bridge by myself, and we would go to Jeans Fair on the Market Street Mall or Fashion Place to get our latest trends, the little Kango or something like that. It was good times. I remember growing up in Wilmington, like, everybody wanted to be in the Stormin' Classic. You know what I mean? We had the Wilmington Little League Baseball that played in Boehner Field up there by Warner. And I think my pop even coached the team a time or two with my little brother playing. Great times growing up in Wilmington, being born and raised in Southbridge. But as I got a teenager, things changed a little bit. It started to be different. Started to be real different. You know, I didn't always see my pop all the time. My mom was always working. And it just seemed like things got real rough real quick. You know, when I look back on it, it was like life went from the Cosby Show to New Jack City, if you could imagine that. But I had good morals and principles. I remember getting that first summer youth job, thanks to Mr. Larry. He had me working at Pulaski. And then when I was 15, the second summer youth job, and I was working at Eden Park. And that was fun, but the only thing about the summer youth job in Eden Park is they always shot dice and smoked weed in the locker rooms. So that was my introduction to the game, right? And all the old heads knew when we got paid because we would like buy weed and shoot dice. And some days we'd be happy when we got paid. A lot of days we'd be sad because we just spent our checks. And I remember walking home from Eden Park one day, and that gas station across from my house, it was a Gulf. But it's still there. It's the BP gas station. I can remember clear as day because the gas station used to be live, like live, for real, for real. So I went over to the gas station after losing some money in a crack game, and I just remember this old air from Southbridge saying, "Hey, man, you want me to show you how to make a couple dollars, man?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and so on and so on. And then I learned it. And I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you what it was like being born and raised in Southbridge. Because it felt good. Things wasn't as rough no more. I had money to pay my way and to help the people that I loved the most. So I was kind of all right with what I was doing, and I stopped going to school because I felt like I was making more than the teachers, and I knew more than them, and I thought I was the man. But I was no dummy. When everybody started graduating high school, I said, let me get my back in here. I went to James Groves High School. I want a diploma too, right? And then after I got my diploma, I said, I got a diploma. I don't need college. But when everybody was going to college, yeah, I enrolled at Dell State. I said, shit, don't worry, go to college too, right? Because I was no dummy, and I knew the streets wouldn't last forever. But while at college, I just fell into that fast money mentality and couldn't live there and be broke and look at the bigger picture and get my degree. Like they like to say in Southbridge, to make a long story short, I fell in with the wrong people and started doing the wrong things. And a week after my 20th birthday, I got locked up for a drug charge. I went to jail. When I went to jail, I was in and out of jail for the next 4 years. Never seeing a full year on the street, violating probation. Until a very significant person, right? And I met this person, since we're talking about growing up in Wilmington, at the Concord Mall. I was working at Foot Locker, and she used to work at the Sears hair studio. And she walked in for a pair of Air Ones this one time, but when she walked in, she walked in. You hear me? I was like, oh, man, how am I going to keep up with her? This ain't no social media. I can't follow her. I got one shot, right? So I said, how can I help you? And she asked for the Air Ones, and I went and got them. And as she was trying on, she said, hold my phone. Now, to share a little bit how old I am, Nokia phones was about the best cell phones at the time, right? And Nokia phones was the only one that had a screen lock. I'm for real, for real. Screen lock was menu star. So I had a Nokia, so I knew it. So she gave me her phone. I had menu star, put my name in there, put my number in there, finish helping her with the sneaks, right? And she started to walk out, and I said, yo, my name Hanif, man, get with me. She said, boy, I don't know you. I don't got your number. I said, yeah, you do it on my phone. Check your contacts. Right? And I had to go back and tell y'all about that experience because me and her birthed two beautiful daughters. And when I came home from jail in 2003, that last time, came home to a newborn daughter, I was committed and dedicated to get my life right, right? So you know when the story get long, they keep saying, long story short, right? I came home from jail, I started working on Fridays, I was busting my butt, I started a business, home renovations. I got into a car accident, it broke my collarbone and 4 ribs. It took me a year to rehab, and during that year, I'm like, what am I going to do? I got felony on my background, I can't do construction, nobody's going to hire me. And then I opened the paper when I started looking for a job, yeah. We used to look in the news journal for job leads, right? And this was only like maybe 2003. 2004, and opened the paper, and I seen Public Allies Delaware. Bow. They said, we want you. We don't care about your charges. We want to show you how to be successful working in nonprofits. And that first year doing it, I met a phenomenal woman. Her name was Marla Blunt Carter, she was program director for Senator Biden at the time, our current president. Yeah, she was working for Biden. She used to have me come up to her office. She was teaching me grant writing, program planning. And then when I left Public Allies, I just kept plugging in. I kept plugging in. Until finally Marla said, yo, you need to be at the table. You are the reentry expert. You lived it. So then I started making moves with the right people. We started the Delaware Reentry Consortium, right? That started IADAP, that make sure the 5 chambers communicate with each other today. Make sure people have reentry plans coming home today, right? I started conversating a lot with Joanna Champney, who now works for DSAM. But at the time, she introduced a bill that would allow felons to get food stamps because of our conversations. I worked for the Hope Commission. I worked for the Delaware Center for Justice. I've worked at West End. I've worked for multiple programs, creating new programs and implementing successful ones. And now I'm proud to say, in 2022, for a guy that's born and raised in Southbridge and to be 43 years old on Friday, I'm happy to say that my mom and dad is in the building. They've been clean for 20 years, still married. I'm happy to say my grandma and my aunt's in the building, Marla Blunt Carter in the building. My daughter in the building. Both my daughters are scholar students. You know what I'm saying? And 2022 has been good to me. Like, I'm a published author. Yeah, they said no plugs, but I got books, 4 Keys to Success. If you think this story is inspirational, you need the book because I'm a published author. And if you don't want to do business here, go to Amazon.com. But I'm just happy that somebody born and raised in Southbridge could share their story with y'all. Thank you.
That was an incredible story. Thank you very much. So let's keep this ball rolling. Coming up next, Billy Farrell.
Howdy, friends. My name is Billy Farrell. I live in beautiful Price's Corner, Delaware. Finest place in all the world, that's right. I was born broker than a buzzard in a boneyard due to circumstances which directly preceded my birth. As a little kid, I was nearly put up for adoption. And my grandma, Farrell, Jewel, said that I could come live with her and my granddad, Hulbert, and they would raise me and my little brother together. When my grandma was a little girl, her daddy was a one-legged moonshiner. If you can imagine how hard a life that was out there in Lenore, West Virginia. That's where my family lived since the 1600s. Matter of fact, I'm the first generation to be born outside of West Virginia. Before my granddaddy was a one-legged moonshiner, he was a two-legged coal miner. And there was an accident in the mine. There was a collapse, and he lost his leg. He couldn't work in the mines anymore. So he took to moonshining, and I'm told he took to moonshine in general. There wasn't much else out there in the Appalachians for anybody. So when my grandma got married, started her family, had some kids, it was her idea to move the whole family out of West Virginia, and they moved to Newark, Delaware, in Chestnut Hill, and that's where they lived for years and years till they retired. And when they retired, my grandparents moved out to Ashton, Idaho, and that's where I went to live with them. Ashton, Idaho is a little bitty Mormon town way out west and way, way up north. Population 1,000 people. A town so small you could dial just the last 4 digits of the phone number and reach anybody. Town so small if you dialed the wrong number, you could still talk for a half hour. A lot of friendly people out there, and it was beautiful too. Little Main Street, about half a dozen blocks. One side of Main Street was all farms. Other side of the Main Street was all little houses everyone lived in, a wood fire stove, fireplaces, and we lived all the way the far end of town. From my grandmother's porch, it was open wilderness. You could see clean to Wyoming. You could see the Grand Teton Mountains right there. It was a paradise. And there were a lot of families, little kids, plenty of playmates. We had all type of adventures. We would catch butterflies with butterfly nets, ride in the creek on an inner tube, try to make friends with the livestock, dare each other to touch electric fence. I remember I was in 3rd grade. I must have been about 8 years old, and a A little friend of mine said there was going to be a fishing contest at a lake on a farm on the other side of town, and they'd be giving out prizes depending on what you caught. And I knew how to fish, sure. My granddad taught me how to fish in the Snake River. And I also knew about prizes. I'd won a few prizes in the Pinewood Derby and the Boy Scouts. I'd won a prize. Shooting marbles outside of school. If you won, you got to keep the other kids' marble. Getting something good for your talent. Didn't cost anything to try, so I was all in. Made up my mind I was going to go. Well, it was scheduled for Saturday. It rained, so they rescheduled it for Monday. I had my heart set on it, even though I had school that day. I decided I was going to play hooky. So that morning, me and my little brother, we got dressed for school, kissed my grandma goodbye, walked out the house. I stepped into the shed where I knew there was a fishing pole and grabbed one. Walked my little brother to school. He went on in school. I continued across town to the lake. There were already some other folks there fishing. Had a little registration table with an old fella, and I said, "Hello, sir, I'm here to compete in the fishing contest for a prize." He said, "All right, young man, where are your parents?" I said, "Well, my mama's in Jacksonville, Florida, and my daddy is in the Army. He's in a place I think is called Germany." And he said, "Well, who do you live with?" I said, "Oh, yeah, sir, I live with my grandparents, the Farrells. We're on the other side of town, down to the end of 8th Street. He said, "Well, where are they now?" I said, "Well, they're home. My grandparents are old, and they don't go out fishing very much." And that satisfied him. He said, "All right, you can fish. The first hour, we're going to give prize for whoever catches the most fish. We'll also give prizes for the 3 biggest fish. And then after that, everyone else will fish a little longer. And at the end of the day, we'll give out some more prizes." And so I made my way over to the lake. On the way, I turned over a rock and found an earthworm and squoze that little night crawler onto the hook and plopped it in the lake, and I was fishing. About halfway through the first hour, a fella caught a great big trout. Beautiful fish. Everyone thought that was for sure a prize winner. He took it up to the judges and measured it. It was 14 inches. Yeah, that's a good fish. About 10 minutes later, I hadn't had a bite of anything, and I got a nibble. I snatched the pole to the side like I'd been taught to set the hook and started reeling it in, and it was a struggle. I was just the littlest person there. I did not intend to be a spectacle, but I'm sure I was, because when I landed that fish and pulled it out of the water, everybody applauded. And it was a good size one, too. I took it right to the judges' table, and they measured it. It was 12 inches. A foot-long rainbow trout. That's a good fish. Was getting close to the time for the first hour to end. I took my fish and I walked around the lake to congratulate everybody on the fishing they'd done and look in their bucket and see what size they were, see how my standings were. Then the fellow blew the whistle, said the first hour's up. Y'all can keep on fishing if you want to, but if you think you got a prize winner, come on up to the table. We'll take a look at it. And we all went up to the table. Another fella came. He had a good-sized sunny fish, which they tend to run a little smaller than a rainbow trout, but his was a good-sized one. And they measured it 11 inches. So they had first, second, and third prize right there, and we lined up to get our prizes. And I don't think the guy in third place thought very much of me. But I got my prize. It was a $10 gift certificate to the local Citgo service station. And I knew where that was. It was the only service station in town. They also had a little store. We would go and trade in Coke bottles for a nickel and buy penny candy. And so I made my way directly there. I had no idea what the heck a gift certificate was. But I figured with $10 in my pocket, I'm bound to be the richest kid in school. So I get to the Citgo station and spoke to the fellow there and said, "Hello, sir, I've just won a prize in a fishing contest, a gift certificate, and I'd like to turn it in for cold, hard cash." Yes, he giggled kind of like that. And he said, "Now, son, that's not how gift certificate works. We're hoping you spend it for the value, and you take the things here that you want worth $10. And in the spirit of the contest, we're hoping you'd spend it on some of the bait and the tackle that we have here for sale." And I said, "No, sir, I'm not interested in any bait or tackle. I'm already a prize-winning fisherman." This operation doesn't need any more financial investment. It's running on full steam. How about I have a box of Hershey bars? And he stood still, and I could tell from the look on his face he was doing mathematics. And I did them too. Box of Hershey bars would have been $7 retail at the time. So he nodded, and he said, "That'd be fine, young man. Let me get you a new unopened box." And he went in the back and came out with the box. And I took a handful of Bazooka Joe gum, said, "We'll square the deal with this." And we shook on it, and he congratulated me on my prize. And said, "Young man, let me give you some paper to wrap that fish in. You can take it on home." And so I took my fish and my candy, my fishing pole, and walked to the other side of town just in time to meet my little brother coming out of his classes. And we walked home together. And just before we went inside, I put the fishing pole back in the shed and walked in the front door chewing bubble gum with a box of Hershey bars. And my grandma took one look at me and said, "Now, Billy, where did you get that candy? Because I know that you don't have any money." I said, "Grandma, I won this in a fishing contest." And she said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to whoop you for stealing or whoop you for lying, but I'm whooping you." And she did. And I was shocked. I did not expect any harsh treatment to come as a result of my adventures. I expected accolades and acclaim. But I took my licks. And then the phone rang. My grandma went and answered the phone. And it was my school teacher. Yeah, she said, "Yeah, Miss Farrell, Billy wasn't in school today, and I just wanted to check and see if he's home and if he's doing fine." And she said, "Yeah, he's fine. Thank you for the call." And she got off the phone, and she came into the other room, and her look had softened. And she said, "Oh, Billy, that was your grade school teacher?" And she said that today you were playing hooky. "But I reckon you've already been punished, so we're going to leave it at that. And how about you show me this prize-winning fish?" So I went and got the fish, unwrapped it out the paper, and she said, "Oh, that is a fine fish. I'm going to teach you how to prepare it." And she did. She showed me how to scrape the scales off it and cut the head off and the tail and split it and clean it out. Then she put a dollop of bacon grease in a cast iron pan and got some cornmeal and some flour and salt and pepper, and she was a powerful sorceress in the kitchen. She could make anything delicious. As a matter of fact, she was good at anything. She could sing, she could play guitar. You would have loved her. Anyhow, before I knew it, we had a hot piece of fish to eat. And I ate some, she had some too, and golly, it was delicious. Fresh food from the earth. It doesn't get any better than that. And right then, I wasn't poor at all. I had abundance and a box of Hershey bars. Now, these days I don't go out fishing very often, but I do still like playing hooky. And in all my years, I've never had a finer bite of fish, and I've never known a finer woman than my grandma. And maybe I did give her a little bit of trouble, but I think she enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Billy, thank you for sharing that with us. As I mentioned earlier, we had some staff members for the News Journal who were helping coach our storytellers tonight. They're wonderful stories, and they would just, give them some guidance. And I just wanted to introduce them. I think they're all sitting over here. If you could stand when I call you. Robert Long, Amanda Fries, Phil Friedman, Brittany Horn, and Emily Little. Thank you, guys. So I want to bring up our next speaker, Salamina Linguer.
Good evening, Wilmington. Ooh, Lord, let me put this away. We haven't learned what a face looks like in 2 years, huh? I want to say it is a blessing and an honor to be back. I enjoy this space because I grew up right here in Wilmington, Delaware. probably about within a 1 mile radius of where we're all sitting tonight. I attribute this journey to an amazing, wonderful woman, my mother, Adelaide Johnson. You might think, growing up right here in Wilmington, you got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. Little bit of all of it. How many of you have ever played? Y'all didn't know I was going to do salsa up here too. God just know how to work the stage. All right, no worries. How many of you have ever played that game, Two Truths and a Lie? So it's kind of like that icebreaker where you're in a new group dynamic and you're trying to get a chance to know one another. So I'm figuring since we're in our kind of step out in Wilmington for the first time, family, we might as well get to know each other. So we'll play a little bit tonight. The way that you play is the person actually makes 3 statements. 2 of them are true and 1 of them is false. So as you think about me living right around the corner down the street on the east side of Wilmington, let's see how well you might think you know me. Statement number 1, I have flown a plane. Statement number 2, I have been bitten by a shark. Statement number 3, I have been arrested and convicted for doing something right. So let me see, put up some fingers out there. What do you think is the lie? Because 2 of them are true. So put up fingers. If you think 1 is a lie, let me see 1s, 2s. What you doing out there? Any 3s out there? All right, so let's see. I have flown a plane. All right. I have been bitten by a shark. But I haven't been arrested. Well, my goodness, what do you mean? You grew up on the east side of Wilmington and you've flown a plane, you've been bitten by a shark? How does that work? All right? I, again, tribute my life, my journey, my choices to this amazing black woman and mother who really taught her children that it's okay to live in the hood, but it's not all right for the hood to live in you. So it is extremely important that as we take these strolls and these walks along this journey of life, that we remember who and whose we are, not what we've been through. So thinking back about my childhood, I flew a plane because every year my mom said, do something new, step outside the box, be different. She was the same woman that would go down to Bellevue State Park and muck stalls just so that my sisters and I can have horseback riding lessons. She's the same woman that when all of our friends on the block were eating fried chicken and fried fish and mashed potatoes and corn and all that, cornbread and greens, she said, I think we're making crab, artichoke, and spinach quiche tonight. What? But I'll tell you that I got a chance to sell and trade some of that quiche to some of my neighbors, all right? So you weren't the only industrial one out there, Bill, all right? She was the type of woman that enrolled me in boating classes down at Old Swedes just so I could learn geometry. I mean, really untraditional, a non-conventional kind of woman that made sure that her children knew that the sky is the limit. So our story started very, very different than a lot of the neighbors, a lot of different than what a little black girl might think about on the east side of Wilmington. And she made sure that she exposed us to whatever she could to broaden our horizons. So our first stop on the Living Legacy train was around the corner at People's Settlement Association, right on 8th and Lombard. That community center, social service agency, rec center for the youth was just a home away from home. You could go and play in the basement where they had board games. You could start an account at the credit union. You could be on the drill squad with Miss Patton. And under the tutelage of Mama Lena Harris and Brother Rashid Mustafa, I think you mentioned him too, Hanif, they started African Rites of Passage. It was a place where little black children, girls and boys, could study about who we were, learn our history, love our culture, and really understand that we need to define who we are and use that definition as we move forward in life. So at People Settlement, I am a living legacy of Mama Lena Harris. The next step along the journey was around the corner on 7th and Church when Christina Cultural Arts Center was still on the east side of Wilmington. I remember taking lessons for everything because my mom said, you're not going to be hanging outside on the street, not on the block, not on the corner. We're going to take you right on around the corner and you're going to learn everything that they have to offer. So I took drawing lessons and pottery lessons and piano lessons. We didn't even have a piano, and I took piano lessons. So as you can tell, I probably wasn't really good at that. But dance classes and theater classes. So when Christina Cultural Arts Center moved up here on 7th and Market, I moved right up downtown with them. And I've been a part of Christina Cultural Arts Center for over 25 years, under the direction of Miss Ray Jones Avery. And my first drama teacher, Sister Zadia Ife. Hey, Sister Zadia taught us what it meant to be on stage. She taught us what it meant to become a character. She taught us what it meant to be able to speak our mind and to express ourselves. So I am a living legacy of Christina Cultural Arts Center under Miss Ray Jones and Sister Zadia Ife. That journey kept me moving. The next step along that path was Public Allies, Delaware.
Shout out Public
Hey, absolutely. So at the time, I was in the inaugural class when Miss Suzanne and Brother Tony Allen, currently Dr. Tony Allen, the president down at Del State University, were the founders here in Delaware. Dr. Allen, he reminded me, please continue. You are an amazing, awesome leader. I need you to keep pushing forward, and I need you to go to school. So I was placed in nonprofits that I still, 25 years later, am still working and pushing and being involved with at People Settlement through the credit union, at Christina Cultural Arts Center as a teaching artist. Those wonderful experiences have helped pave the way for who I am. So through Public Allies, I am a living legacy of Dr. Tony Allen. Where did that take me next? Brother Tony said, girl, you better keep going to school because you always have to improve and inspire and be the very best possible you can be. So when I said it feels good to be back, this very stage, about 6-7 years ago, is what I graduated on when I graduated from Springfield College. So I walked across this stage with my family out there supporting me, saying you did a good job and you were a trendsetter and you set the path for the rest of us in the family. We're grateful, and I'm grateful just for the opportunity, again, to be here being a living legacy. Where did that take me next? People Settlement, Christina Cultural Arts Center, Springfield College, Kaumba Academy Charter School. Hey! Kaumba Academy, which also is in a 1-mile radius of this very space. We are celebrating our 20th year anniversary this year. So that means 20 years ago, we started a school that was about arts integration. It was about making sure that art is a tool for social change. So all of those little steps along the way, learning about my history and heritage and African rites of passage, learning about the arts and theater and dance at Christina Cultural Arts Center, learning about how that all fits together through human services from Springfield College and Public Allies. All of those little pieces have helped build who I am today. So I am a living legacy of what we're building at Kaumba Academy. So speaking of Kaumba, I have students that are in the 4th and the 8th grade that are working on telling their own story. They are telling their Kaumba story. Kaumba meaning creativity. They are definitely moving forward on the path of their personal narrative. And just like all teenagers nowadays, they be like, Miss Alimata, why are you asking us to do something you're not willing to do yourself? So when I heard about the Storytellers Project, I said, you know what? You can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you won't go. So I am up here on this stage being an instructor, being an example, being a role model for my students, because I want you to know that your voice matters. And that lesson came to me through an amazing, awesome, amazing, fabulous Black woman. So, Mommy, I give you the honor. I thank you so much for being the trendsetter, for raising the glass ceiling, and for breaking all of the boundaries to let me be the person that I am today. I leave you with a question that she asked me. What will be your legacy that you leave on when you are gone? Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. And I understand there's some students are in the audience today. Is that right? All right. Can we ask them to stand up? And that's right. That's beautiful. All right.
Trying to get extra credit.
All right, next up, Jose Ignacio Castaneda. We know Jose very well. Jose is a reporter at the News Journal, so treat him well, and he's got a beautiful story for you.
Please laugh, my salary depends on it. No, but this is a lot of people, you know? It's a lot of people. And you may think, Jose, you're a reporter. You talk to people. You ask them questions every single day. I think a few of you have even, been asked questions by me for this job. So it's like, you should be comfortable with this. Yeah. But like 6-year-old me, no, he would not be at all. Like, no. I was completely different from the rest of my family. I was like a black sheep. I grew up in Mexico. I had my mom, my dad, older brother, and older sister. And they were totally unlike me. They were people till the end. My mom especially, the epitome of a people person, She was always like, oh, let's host someone. Who are we gonna host? When are you gonna bring your friends over? Oh, let's get the appetizers together. Oh yeah, let's make this for dinner, let's do this for dessert. And I was like, okay. And then, like when my friends would come over, I was 6 years old, and they would come over, it'd be like 15 minutes, I'd be like, Mom, when are they gonna go home? Are they gonna go home at any time? I wanna go up in my room. Like we would have birthday parties, and my brother and I are 11 years apart, but our birthdays are 3 days away. So it would be like, Josh, what do you wanna do for your birthday? Well, I want to have, the whole family, the cousins, let's have aunts and uncles and the grandparents and all my friends and, everyone from school. Like, Jose, what do you want to do? Just like us. Dinner. And then we just go to sleep. So that was me and my family. That's been me 23 years going on, So it's that's a struggle I live with. But, it was one of these times, I was 6 years old, and it was very much this. I mean, my mom and dad were having a dinner party downstairs, and I don't know if you've ever been in a room and then heard, like, a party going on somewhere else in another room. It's super, super scary of hearing, like, all those people, and especially now during COVID, I'm sure some of you can relate, just being, like, just hearing that, like, low rumble of, like, people laughing and talking and stuff, and glasses clinking, and, they're all eating and stuff, and you're just like, oh, God, I don't want to go out there. So then, you know, I was in my room. It was upstairs, and I was like dark, except for the TV light that was just shining right in my little 6-year-old eyeballs of just like, you know, cartoons. I was sitting on the story chest, like right in front of my bed, and I was just watching TV. The screen was like right here, and just watching cartoons, you know, as one does. And usually I would have the chest, and I would have the space next to me, and I would have cookies right here, and then I would have a cup of milk right here, and, you know, that would be the arrangement. Great Friday night for a 6-year-old. And then, so that it was that time, and I was like, you know what sounds good? Some cookies and milk right now. So I decided to. I turned off the TV. It was one of those old TVs, I'm sure some of you guys remember, of just like, you could turn it off and you could hear it fizzle for like 15 minutes afterward. And then you would still see like the Technicolor screen on it, and you could just kind of feel the electricity coming off. So that's what I did. I turned it off, and then I, walked out of my door, and I did that, and I was like, okay. And I went down the staircase, past this little like thing with like pictures that we had, and down, and I just stood there at the bottom, and I looked to my left, and there was a dining room full of adults, drinking, having fun, smoking, drinking coffee, whatever you name it, just rumbling, like just that whole sound was just petrifying. And in front of me was like the open kitchen door, and I was like, okay, this is it. And, you know, like looking back on it, it was probably like 30 feet of runway, like in front of me. It was probably like 4. It was probably just super small, this little hallway. And I just kind of ran across as fast as I could to try not to get noticed by this room full of adults that I do not want to interact with. And, I go into the kitchen, and then, as I remember, the cupboard was like this high. And I grabbed the packet of Oreos, which was on the top cupboard. And in hindsight, it was probably the loudest packaging that Nabisco has ever created. Just every single thing I did with my fingers, like, it was just trying to bring it down as slowly as I could without drawing attention to myself. And then I got it down, and I got my cup of milk, so I was going out of the kitchen, tray in one hand and cup in the other. And, I'm going out, and as I'm going out, I start hearing, like, what they're talking about. I'm like, oh. I was very curious. I'm sure, like, as kids, we were all curious, like, what the adults were talking about. So I was there, and I was like, okay, what are they talking about? And I was just trying to go. I was like, and then I just, like, I'm trying to listen in, and then I hear my dad, like, hey. I'm like, oh, yeah. And he's like, since you want to, be in the adult conversation, why don't you come up here? Like, pull up a chair, get a coffee. Let's light up your cigarette. Let's come speak with the adults if you want to be a part of the conversation. And I was like, okay. And he was like, come on. And he pulled up a chair, and then I sat next to him. And I had to say hi to all the adults, the worst thing in my life. And, I just put the tray of Oreos on the table and the cup of milk here, and my dad was drinking coffee over here. And I just sat there, and I was just, being bored, being a 6-year-old kid at an adult table. And I grabbed, I was like, you know what? Let me try something. And I grabbed my dad's cup of coffee, and I slid it over, and then I opened the packet of Oreos, and then I started dipping them. It was delicious. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever had Oreos and coffee before. It's delicious. That taste of like the bitter coffee with like the really sweet Oreos, so good. And it's like the heat of the coffee too, like really melts the Oreo. So it was delicious. So if you've ever had cookies and milk too, like you sometimes have to you lose it and you have to put your hand into the mug and fish it out. So you can imagine my dad was super happy with me and 6-year-old grubby hands just digging into his coffee and stuff. But it was delicious. I loved it. And then I enjoyed the conversation. So yeah, some time passed and I found myself in Wilmington. And now I'm a reporter. So I'm, curious for a living. And yeah, so now I really find myself at that intersection again of, community over here, food over here, and I walk through the streets a lot. I walk through the neighborhoods. I like to talk to people. I like to, meet people where they are, try different foods, try different restaurants here in Wilmington. I love it. And, it's really led me to do some really cool stories that I'm really proud of. There was one about a Thai restaurant that enveloped like this whole neighborhood into its family. There was one about a butcher shop in Newport that like continued this family legacy across 3 generations and 2 countries. Really good chorizo. If anyone wants to try it, delicious. And then there was how this restaurant on the east side is leading revitalization efforts. So really cool stuff. Shout out to Jerry Deans. And then I did this one, and it's probably my favorite story that I've ever reported. It was a guy named Frank. Some of you may know him. He is on West 4th Street. Shout out to Frank's too. And he runs Frank's Deli. And I had heard so much about him. Like people were coming up to me like, you have to try Frank's Deli. It is so good. It's a community staple. Frank, everyone loves Frank. He's like this, figure on West 4th Street in the hilltop. I was like, okay, I gotta try it. So one time I was walking and this person was like gonna introduce me to Frank. She's like, oh yeah, let's go and let's meet Frank. And yeah, just preemptively, he doesn't speak a lot of English, so if the conversation's like 5 minutes, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm ready for like a 5-minute conversation, It's only the man I've wanted to meet my entire life. And we go and we walk into the deli and it's, I don't know if you've ever been in there, but it's this super tight space, like very tight. You could kind of smell the steaming crab and kind of like the grease and stuff, and it's all smoky in there and it's kind of hot. And I'm just in there and then, the signs, the old deli signs, and it has some letters falling off. It says like hamburger. And then it's like, oh, he's not here. It's like, okay. And we go walk out the door, and there's Frank, this 64-year-old Korean man, and he's wearing his baseball cap and his vest that he often wears. And I was like, hi, my name's Jose. Nice to meet you. I work with a news journal. And he was like, hi. And then he was like, yeah. He was like, do you speak Spanish? I was like, yeah. Okay. And then he proceeds to tell me his entire life story. 45 minutes where we were there. The person I was with was like, we have some other meetings, like, maybe we should get going. And I'm just like, wait, tell me how you lived in Venezuela again. Like, what happened when you got robbed? Like, what happened after that? It's like 50 minutes, it's been an hour, just standing there in his market talking. I was like, I need to do a story on this man. So then I did a profile on him. And it was this really interesting story of this man's life and the different stages of his life and the different names that he's had and how he's kind of made a name for himself here in Wilmington and on 4th Street. And it was my favorite story I've ever written. It was just great. I loved it. I loved meeting Frank. I still go sometimes like, Frank, are you there? Can I stop by? So yeah, that was a great story. I love doing it. And now sometimes I still have, cookies and coffee if the mood hits. Sometimes get the Oreos. They're not as loud anymore, but still really good. And, but no, through all that work and stuff, now I realized, now I'm the one who's inviting people to come sit around a table and tell me their stories. So, thank you.
All right, I think he can keep his job. What do you think? So for our last speaker to the night, bringing us home, Lauren Farrell.
No, but Bill is awesome, right? I'm also the shortest one here, so give me a minute. Hey there. Have you guys ever heard the phrase, this is a marathon, not a sprint? Yeah. I had, and I don't think I ever really understood what that meant, because on a cold April morning, my best friend and I were standing at Tubman Garrett Park on the Wilmington riverfront, realizing that we drastically overestimated just how warm 40 degrees was. So we're standing there, rubbing our arms together, waiting for them to call us to line up at the starting line, and we both look at each other and go, we need warmer clothes. So we take the minute to text our significant others and ask them to bring us some warm clothes. So I take out my phone and I text my boyfriend and I make a specific request for my sparkly Westchester University hoodie. Because it's my favorite, because it's his least favorite, because Lauren, you're almost 30 years old. There's absolutely no reason for you to be wearing anything with glitter. And then I realize they're calling us to start lining up, and I add a quick postscript and say, P.S., bring a beer to the finish line, I think I might need it. So as we line up for this half marathon, my friend and I are ready. We're waiting for the gun to go off, and we are excited. And the gun goes off, and the first 2 miles are just annoying. We make it past the people who really underestimated just how fast their mile pace was and start kind of sliding out of our way, and past people who are waving at the photographers to make sure there's just that one good photo of themselves that's not all red and sweaty on the course. And then mile 3 happens, and I get a rock in my shoe. So I look at my friend and I say, do you mind if I stop? And she goes, do you mind if I keep going? Later, she'd tell me it's because she knew if she stopped, she wouldn't keep going. So as I bend down, get the rock out of my shoe, retie my sneaker, I finally hit play on my running playlist, and I start running through the streets of my hometown. And as I make my way out of the Wilmington riverfront, make a left turn onto 4th Street, there's a voice in the back of my head that says, you shouldn't be here. You should be with your mom. So as I keep running, with the Wilmington Police Station on my left and Walnut Street coming up straight in front of me, I look up and I see it. It's the Newcastle County Courthouse. That's where my mom works. And that voice is back, and it sends guilt squeezing into my chest so hard that I almost stop. Because 4 months prior, my mom was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer that they can't cure. And my brain starts telling me, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be having fun. You shouldn't be running. You should be home. You should be helping your mom. You should be helping your dad. And as I pass the courthouse, keep making my way down Walnut Street, and I'm running through this town that I grew up in, thinking about just how much I shouldn't be here. I make a left turn off of Walnut Street, and I cross King, and I head on my way into Brandywine Park, and I want to stop. I'm really tired. This is terrible. And then that voice shows up again, and it says, you don't get to stop. If your mom's fighting cancer, you don't get to stop running a half marathon, right? If it's harder for her, this is nothing compared to that. And as I keep running through Brandywine Park, and these pieces of my life are just kind of flying at me, and the last 4 months are just coming, and I'm seeing these moments of my dad and I sitting in a hospital cafeteria thinking about how the doctors just told us we might not take her home. And there's that guilt again, and it tells me that I should stop. And I realize I don't get to stop. Not when my mom's fighting for her life. And I start picturing these moments of being with my dad and being with my mom, and I see the conversation I had with my dad in that hospital cafeteria, and I'm thinking about how 10 years prior, almost to the month, we were in a similar situation, finding out that my brother had a malignant brain tumor the size of a golf ball, a centimeter off his brainstem. And as I'm shedding these emotions, I start to realize that people around me are shedding clothes. And that guilt is standing there telling me that I should stop, but I'm also trying to avoid people who are throwing clothes and leaving them on the course. And that's how I learned the term throwaway clothes. And as I look up, I realize I'm at mile 5, and that's almost the halfway mark. And I still start thinking about my mom and my brother. And I'm thinking about how I don't get to stop. Not today. But I want to, because I'm tired, and I don't want to do this anymore. And everything hurts. From the tips of my toes rubbing against the tops of my sneakers to the tips of my ears, because my baseball hat just isn't doing enough to cover them. And I look up and I'm only at mile 6, and now I know my brain's playing tricks on me, because there's no way I've only gone 1 mile, not at all. And as I keep running, and I pass the next mile marker, I start thinking, oh my God, I really might die. This is terrible. And then the thought hits me again. There's that guilt. You don't get to say that you're going to die. on the course of a half marathon when your mom and your brother really almost did. So as I make it to mile 7, and I hit that turnaround point, and I start running, I'm running harder and I'm running faster, and I am still really, really tired, and I want to stop. But at this point, my body's telling me, if you stop, you won't start again, so you really shouldn't stop. And I'm thinking about conversations I had with my mom before I came to this race, where she told me, you've got a life to live, go do it. And I keep running, and as I finish my way through Brandywine Park, and I make my way towards King Street, and I make a right, and I run past the Newcastle County Courthouse. This time it's on my left. And I'm thinking about my mom and how this time I'm running for her. I'm running for my brother. And I make that final push, and I keep going, and I keep going. And the song changes in my headphones, and it changes to Still Breathing by Green Day. I can't help but be struck at how perfect that is. Still breathing. And I see it, mile 13. I can see the finish line from where I am. I'm so unbelievably close. And the experience that I've just had on the streets of my hometown, realizing that if I keep pushing and I keep going, I can do this. We can do this. And as I look across the finish line and I take those last couple of steps, there's my boyfriend with my sparkly Westchester hoodie in one hand and a Bud Light in the other. And is Still Breathing in Green Day is still playing through my headphones. And I finally stop running. And I sink into my boyfriend's embrace, and he whispers, I'm so proud of you. I finally get it. I'm still breathing. We're still breathing. Life's a marathon, not a sprint. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to try to raise it. Hey, Jose, you could have pulled this out and walked around. He was so upset he wasn't able to walk around. I want to thank our storytellers tonight because, they're wonderful stories, wonderful stories. I love them all. But it takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of something to put yourself out there in front of a group of people and tell a story. And these were just wonderful, wonderful range of emotions tonight. So I do want to ask everybody, just if our storytellers could stand up, everybody give them one big round of applause. And really, this is what community is about, right? Getting together and telling stories, right? Getting around the campfire telling stories, around the dinner table telling stories. We're so glad you could join us tonight. This was a wonderful, wonderful evening out for me to hear these wonderful stories. It's great to be in a room with other people again. Thank you very much, and we hope everybody enjoyed themselves. Everybody have a good night.